Some games start off so badly that you just want to drop the controller in the first few minutes. Movement feels clunky, the story seems soulless, and everything points to a massive disappointment. But that's where a lot of people get it wrong, because with just a bit more time, everything can change. Suddenly the story deepens, the gameplay clicks into place, and that empty-looking world opens up with possibilities. Before you know it, you're not just invested, you're completely hooked, and glad you didn't quit too soon. I'm Jax, and if you're new here, welcome to Play Hunters. If you can subscribe to help me grow, I'd really appreciate it, from one gamer to another. And before we jump in, tell me what was the last game that felt boring at first but ended up blowing your mind? Drop it in the comments and let's get started with the first game. Final Fantasy XIII starts off like a game that forgot what freedom means. You spend hours walking through narrow corridors, no towns, no exploration, and combat that feels stiff. The story throws out terms with no context, making everything more confusing. It's an intro that pushes people away, especially those expecting something closer to the older entries in the series. But the issue isn't what the game wants to tell, it's how it tells you everything at first. If you stick with it, you start to feel that something bigger is being built. The story begins to emotionally connect the characters, and even the cold dialogue from the start starts to make sense. The music grows alongside the plot, and themes like sacrifice, destiny, and fighting against the system become way deeper than they seemed. It's like the game tests your patience, just to open up its heart afterward. Combat also shifts dramatically. From a basic system, it evolves into dynamic battles, where swapping roles mid-fight is everything. Creating strategies, breaking defenses, and mastering the rhythm becomes just as important as your gear. And when the game finally drops you into Pulse, a massive open world with giant monsters and true freedom, it feels like stepping out of prison and seeing the sky again. Final Fantasy XIII isn't easy to love at first, but if you get through the corridors and understand what it's going for, you'll find a bold, different RPG with its own identity. The story hits hard, the combat becomes addictive, and the journey once lost ends up unforgettable. It proves that sometimes it's worth giving a game a second chance. It's easy to give up on the Surge 2 within the first few hours. The movement feels stiff, the controls don't respond quite right, and the early enemies are both generic and punishing. Everything feels awkward, even the way the ruined city is introduced, making it hard to figure out what's going on. At first glance, it seems like a soulless Souls-like, filled with cheap frustration. But if you push through, the payoff comes. The combat starts to shine with the dismemberment system. You choose where to strike, what to cut, and how to use it. The design of weapons and armor forces you to plan, study each enemy, and think ahead. The city, once confusing, starts to reveal smart shortcuts and well-connected zones. That's when the game starts to flow. The story, which first felt like background noise, turns into a dark tale about AI control and environmental collapse. And even with a mute, customizable lead, you feel like you belong in that broken world. The atmosphere gets richer, the tension builds, and every small victory starts to matter. Dying and trying again finally makes sense. The Surge 2 is rough and unfair at first, but incredibly rewarding. Once you learn how to play by its rules, everything improves. Combat gets addictive, progression is satisfying, and the world opens up in clever ways. It's a unique Souls-like that few finish, but those who do, always recommend it. In the first few minutes of Call of Cthulhu, it's hard to take the game seriously. Movement feels outdated, the visuals don't impress, and the characters act like wax figures. The slow intro, filled with talking and barely any action, makes it feel like a generic walking simulator with a famous name slapped on the box. But that impression starts to crumble fast. The story slowly unfolds with disturbing details, strange clues, and events that don't quite add up. The main character, a detective with his own trauma, dives into a case that slowly swallows him whole, and once the hallucinations kick in, you're no longer sure what's real. The narrative grows and starts messing with your head constantly. The sanity mechanic flips how you look at every decision. Digging too deep can be dangerous, and trusting certain characters might drive you insane. It all starts to weigh on you, and even with technical flaws, the game keeps pulling you in. The tension rises, and the psychological horror starts to take over. Call of Cthulhu doesn't scare you with jump scares, it disturbs you with ideas. It's a slow-burn horror game, but one that rewards anyone looking for more than cheap thrills. It doesn't start well, but once it clicks, it delivers a haunting and fascinating ride you won't forget. Signalis starts off strange, confusing, and almost silent. The retro style blends sci-fi with horror in a cold, distant way, and the game doesn't bother explaining much. The menus are clunky, inventory is tight, and the mechanics feel like they came from classic survival horror games. Anyone expecting something modern might feel let down at first, but that early discomfort is part of the plan. Slowly, the game draws you in with a sense of isolation and unease. You realize you're in an abandoned facility, surrounded by cryptic messages and fragmented memories. That feeling of vulnerability builds constant tension, and even with simple visuals, the atmosphere is heavy, symbolic, and full of hidden meaning. What first feels stiff turns into something strategic. Every item matters. Every bullet is precious. The puzzles aren't easy, but they make sense in this eerie world. The combat is sharp, and every enemy is a real threat. Progress sneaks up on you, and before long, you're completely wrapped in the mystery. Signalis is a game about memory, identity, and loss. It doesn't want to scare you with monsters, it wants to haunt you from within. It starts cold, weird, and tough, but by the end, you'll realize you were playing something truly special, made with rare care and a melancholy soul that lingers long after you finish. Your first impression of Dragon's Dogma might be pure frustration. Movement feels weird, the menus are a mess, and the camera constantly gets in the way. The pawn system makes no sense at first, and the story feels like it's just been tossed in with little impact. A lot of people quit early, thinking it's just another generic RPG trying to mimic the greats. But the game turns things around with a world-building style that's completely its own. Fights against giant creatures are unforgettable, full of climbing, grabbing, and brutal strikes. The class system is wide open, encouraging creativity, and nighttime battles are so intense that walking at night becomes a real risk. Suddenly, everything feels tenser, more alive. The story starts to unfold with mysterious events, twists, and a mythology that blends the classic with the absurd. It has a rare sense of freedom, it doesn't hold your hand, and at times even feels broken. But that's part of the charm. You learn through failure, trial, and the courage to explore the unknown. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen gets better with every hour. If you can get past the rough start, you'll discover insane combat mechanics, a world full of secrets, and a journey that refuses to be forgotten. It's imperfect, but it's got soul, and that counts for more than any polish. Right off the bat, Hitman Absolution feels off, especially if you know the series. The intro plays more like an action movie than a strategic assassination game. It tries to guide you too much with cutscenes, automatic prompts, and little freedom in the early missions. Fans expecting the classic Hitman vibe get frustrated fast. But as the campaign moves forward, it loosens up, the levels get bigger, the objectives more varied, and that signature freedom to do things your own way finally kicks in. You can poison, disguise, sabotage, or improvise. Each map becomes a playground of options, and planning your kills becomes fun again. Even the story, which felt over the top and kind of cheesy, finds its rhythm and delivers some cool moments. The soundtrack, weird characters, and unique locations create a mix that's strange but enjoyable. Hitman was never about deep plots, but Absolution tries to add something more personal, and sometimes it works. Hitman Absolution starts off trying to be something it's not, but when it remembers its roots, it delivers creative levels, smart challenges, and ridiculously satisfying kills. It's not a fan favorite, but if you stick with it, you'll find a solid, bold game with some of the best missions of its generation. Starting Yakuza 3 is a test of patience. The pacing is slow, with long scenes at an orphanage and almost no action early on. It feels more like a family drama than an open-world brawler filled with twists and chaos. The visuals show their age, and movement feels stiff. A lot of people give up before the story even gets going. But those who stick around find out it's all intentional. The story starts small to make you care about the characters. When the criminal underworld comes knocking again, the impact hits harder. The tone shifts dramatically, and the calm moments give weight to every tough decision later on. That emotional connection pays off. Gameplay picks up too. Fights become more varied. Streets open up with absurd side quests, secrets, and mini-games. The contrast between drama and humor starts to click, giving the series its unique identity. And even with technical limits, the game has heart and just the right amount of beatdown. Yakuza 3 is about slowing down before everything explodes. The beginning might feel dull, but it sets the stage for a story that blends humanity and brutality like no other. Give it a chance and you'll understand why this series won so many fans and why this chapter is so important. Nier Automata's beginning barely scratches the surface of what it really is. It feels like a generic hack and slash with modest graphics and a story that takes forever to explain itself. The early missions repeat areas, and while the combat looks stylish, it feels shallow. A lot of players think it's over after the first ending, but that's just the start. Everything flips once you realize you're meant to replay it, then replay it again. Each run adds new perspectives, plot twists, and gameplay changes. What looked simple turns into something deep and heavy. It explores themes like consciousness, purpose, and the void of a meaningless existence, and it does it with stunning emotional weight. Bit by bit, gameplay evolves, new mechanics show up, genres shift, and even the UI becomes part of the story. The game starts to mess with your expectations and your emotions. Everything feels like it connects to something bigger, even when it's confusing. It's an emotional puzzle that comes together piece by piece. Nier Automata starts off ordinary, but it ends as something unforgettable. A game that doesn't reveal itself right away. It makes you think, feel, and question everything. It speaks to you, and once it's over, it never leaves your mind. Pathologic 2 doesn't make anything easy. It throws you into a strange, hostile world with almost no guidance and brutal systems. Hunger, thirst, disease, and doubt surround you at all times. The combat feels clunky, movement is awkward, and even figuring out what to do is a struggle. It's like waking up inside a nightmare. But that sense of discomfort is exactly the point. You play as a healer in a city on the brink of collapse, trying to save lives as everything falls apart. You can't save everyone, and that helplessness hits hard. Every conversation carries weight, every choice has real consequences. It's not a game to be won, it's a game to be endured. Over time, you learn how to move through the chaos, where to sleep, what to trade, who to trust. You realize combat is the least of your problems. The real challenge is emotional and moral. Time ticks on, the plague spreads, and your decisions grow heavier. You start asking what matters more, your survival or someone else's. Pathologic 2 breaks your confidence at the start, but it ends as one of the most intense and unsettling narratives in recent memory. It feels punishing, but it's just being honest. It throws you into the dark, but the light you find, even if it's small, stays with you forever. Demon's Souls starts like an open invitation to frustration. It explains nothing, throws you into a foggy nightmare, and kills you before you even learn the controls. Combat is slow, every mistake is punished, and the opening visuals do nothing to calm the nerves. If you expected fast action, you'll find a world that demands patience and discipline. It's a cold, brutal welcome. But it's in that brutality that the game hooks you. With every attempt, you start to learn the unspoken rules of the world. The traps, hidden shortcuts, the weight behind every step, there's a logic to it all. It's not impossible, but it wants you to earn everything. Slowly, the feeling of helplessness turns into mastery, and nothing beats the rush of taking down a boss that once felt unbeatable. The atmosphere pulls you in too. Each area is dark, decaying, and full of secrets that aren't handed to you. Everything has to be earned. Without a straightforward story, you piece together the lore yourself, reading the world, catching clues, and building your own interpretation. It's a game that respects your patience and your brain. Demon's Souls starts off cold, but rewards you like few others. It doesn't hold your hand, but delivers one of the most unforgettable and addicting journeys you'll ever have. A classic that reshapes you through pain and reminds you why victory feels so damn good. Even as one of the greatest RPGs ever made, The Witcher 3 can be overwhelming at first. The flood of strange names, factions, characters, and past events hits like a tidal wave. And the combat, kind of stiff, with clunky animations and menus that aren't intuitive. If you're hoping to get hooked in the first few minutes, you might end up lost wondering why everyone keeps calling it a masterpiece. But something clicks once you let the game breathe. Side quests begin to unfold, characters become unforgettable, and what seemed like filler missions take unexpected turns. The writing is sharp, full of nuance, and the world slowly pulls you in. It doesn't revolve around you, it existed before you, and it'll go on with or without you. Over time, you learn to master combat, make use of oils, signs, and prep work. Mechanics start to make sense, and the challenge turns into enjoyment. You're free to explore forests, ruins, villages, and shape the fate of tragic or heroic stories. It's a slow burn, but one that pays off. The Witcher 3 tests your patience early on, but then wins you over completely. Before you know it, dozens of hours have passed, and you still want more. It's a journey made for those who take their time and want something unforgettable. Few games start as awkwardly as Kingdom Come: Deliverance. The controls are stiff, the combat system feels broken, and the first hours are filled with mundane chores and long conversations. There's no magic, no dragons, no powers, just an ordinary young man in a brutally realistic medieval world, where even learning to hold a sword is a struggle. But it's that rawness that pulls you in. This game doesn't want you to feel like a hero, it wants you to feel what it was like to survive in that time. You don't master combat through tutorials, but by getting beaten in real fights. You don't earn respect with cutscenes, but with your actions. Everything is earned through effort and persistence. The story also grows naturally. You start just trying to survive, but end up entangled in a political drama full of betrayal, war, and heavy moral decisions. The world reacts to your choices, and even small details like how you dress or speak affect your relationships. It's full immersion, earned through time and dedication. Kingdom Come Deliverance doesn't make anything easy, but that's what makes it special. Push through the rough beginning, and you'll find one of the most realistic and rewarding RPGs ever made. It's not a game that treats you like royalty, not until you've earned it. The shift in formula for Origins threw a lot of people off early on. The pacing is slow, the combat feels odd at first, and it feels like an RPG that's just too different from the old Assassin's Creed games. The tutorials drag on, and the freedom seems buried under layers of instructions. For longtime fans, it was a serious identity shock. But give it a few hours, and the vision starts to shine. Egypt opens up before you, with breathtaking landscapes, secret-filled ruins, and stories woven into its mythology. The new combat system, more tactical and brutal, begins to click. The map stops feeling overwhelming and starts calling you to explore. The story also deepens. The main character gains complexity, the conflicts escalate, and your choices go far beyond hidden blades. Side quests turn into hidden gems, and the historical setting becomes one of the most captivating in the franchise. Step by step, the strangeness fades and you're drawn in. Assassin's Creed Origins starts slow, but once it gets going, it proves the reinvention was worth it. It's an epic journey, rich in detail and full of moments that stick with you. A new beginning that rewards your patience with something great. Vampyr doesn't make a great first impression. The movement is clunky, combat feels unbalanced, and environments start to look repetitive. Post-war London's dark vibe grabs your attention, but the intro is confusing, with long-winded dialogues. And the whole idea of being both a doctor and a monster feels too good to be true. But soon, the game shows its real strength choice. You're not just a hunter, you're someone who decides who lives and who dies, and every life taken has real consequences. Killing makes you stronger, but it also destroys entire communities. Each resident has a deep backstory, real illness, and connections that affect the narrative based on your decisions. Combat improves over time. Vampyr abilities add variety, and the progression system becomes more engaging. The city evolves with your actions, and the constant push and pull between control and thirst keeps things intense. The story expands into conspiracies, secret orders, and a mystery that won't stop twisting. Vampyr isn't perfect, but it's bold. It stumbles at first, but once you get what it's doing, it pulls you in like few games can. It's about control, humanity, and the thin line of morality. Stick with it, and it'll leave its mark. GreedFall can push you away right from the start. Long dialogues, too much politics, and a lack of early action make it feel like a slow, old-school RPG. Combat seems shallow, the menus are messy, and the customization doesn't impress. It's easy to put the controller down before the game even gets started. But that's exactly when it surprises you. Once you land on the island, everything changes. Factions, tribes, and nations clash in a complex power struggle. Politics turn into real tension, and choices start shaping your path. Missions stop being chores and become moral dilemmas that leave a lasting impact on the world. The gameplay also picks up. Combat gains weight with spells, traps, and special abilities. Your decisions affect alliances, romance, and even the ending. The world blends Renaissance vibes with fantasy in a way that feels fresh, and the more you dig in, the more alive it becomes. GreedFall doesn't try to impress you out of the gate, but if you give it time, you'll uncover an RPG with soul, strong ideas, and a world that rewards those who see past first impressions. In the first few minutes of Stranding, it's hard to understand what's going on. You walk, stumble, carry boxes, and sit through long cutscenes filled with strange symbols and abstract ideas. It feels like you're stuck in a delivery sim with awkward controls and a story that takes forever to unfold. A lot of people quit right there, thinking that's all the game has to offer. But the real message is different. Slowly, you begin to realize the game is about connection between people, places, and ideas. The story opens up with intense characters, emotional twists, and a world that starts to make sense. Every delivery becomes a mission of rebuilding, and every route turns into a personal journey. The gameplay system evolves. Bridges, ladders, vehicles, all built with help from other players. You begin to feel like you're part of something bigger. The once empty map becomes a playground full of meaning, and even simple challenges start to carry emotional weight. It's not about rushing, it's about being present. Death Stranding isn't designed to win you over instantly, but once you understand what it's trying to say, everything changes. It's a game about rebuilding the world and yourself one step at a time. Dark Souls 2 is, from the start, the strangest of the trilogy. The movement feels clunky, the world feels off, and the sense of despair isn't as strong as in the others. How enemies respawn and how bosses are designed throws people off. If you're coming straight from Dark Souls, the change in tone can be jarring. But if you keep going, you'll discover something unique. The game embraces solitude in a different way, with zones that feel disconnected but hide deep lore and tough challenges. The story is fragmented, as always, but if you read between the lines, you'll find themes of identity, loss, and endurance. Combat becomes deeper. With creative builds and a massive variety of weapons, the game rewards experimentation. Enemies stop respawning after a while, changing the whole rhythm. There are amazing bosses, unforgettable locations, and new mechanics that slowly reveal their purpose. Dark Souls 2 might be the hardest to love, but also the easiest to revisit. It doesn't try to copy the original. It carves out its own path. And once you get that, the bond becomes real. Dragon Age Inquisition starts like a flood of tutorials. There's so much going on, systems, menus, options, explanations, that it all overlaps. The sense of freedom feels lost in a sea of checklists, and the early combat doesn't impress. It feels like an RPG stuck between generations, unsure of where to focus. But it eventually finds its pace. The story gains weight, the characters win you over, and the political and magical tension starts to rise. Choices matter again, bringing real consequences and unexpected turns. You begin to understand your role and the impact of the alliances you choose. The gameplay picks up too. Abilities feel more impactful, combat becomes more strategic, and exploring the maps turns into a rewarding habit. Open areas reveal secrets, legendary enemies, and memorable scenery. What started off scattered starts to come together in big, meaningful decisions and epic battles. Dragon Age Inquisition asks for patience early on, but it pays off. It grows from a lukewarm RPG into a grand adventure full of heart. Tactics Ogre Reborn starts off dense, not because it's hard, but because it throws you straight into a political conflict full of names, regions, and factions. If you're not paying attention, you'll get lost fast. The story hits hard right from the beginning without holding your hand. And for many, that's a turnoff. It feels too complex, too fast, but that's just the beginning. Over time, everything starts to fall into place. The political drama becomes personal. Your choices truly shape the world. Key characters can die, betray you, or walk away entirely. The story doesn't pull punches, and that's what hooks you. Every conversation matters. Every alliance can backfire, and nothing is guaranteed. The game demands focus, but it pays off with intensity. Combat is deep and punishing. The AI won't forgive mistakes, and every battle feels like a bloody game of chess. Terrain height, unit classes, equipment, positioning, everything affects the outcome. There are no easy wins, but when you do win, it feels earned. You don't succeed by brute force, you win because you played smart. Tactics Ogre doesn't try to impress right away, but those who stick with it find one of the most complete tactical RPGs ever made. And when the credits roll, you understand why it inspired so many others. It's brutal, political, human, and worth every second. You start Days Gone thinking it's just another zombie game. The intro is slow, full of dialogue, and the world feels way too big for how little seems to be happening. The early combat is basic, your bike's always out of gas, and the story doesn't seem to take off. But there's something there, something that slowly grows without you even noticing. And when you do notice, it's too late, you're hooked. Bit by bit, everything starts to shift. The characters gain weight, the reasons behind their actions come into focus, and the threats start to feel real. With every new camp, mission, or stretch of road, you feel like you're fighting for something. And it's not just survival, it's about connection, about a lost past, about finding a reason to keep going in all that silent chaos. Gameplay evolves with that curve. Your bike becomes home, your weapons get deadlier, and facing hordes stops being suicide and starts feeling like strategy. You learn to hunt, escape, prepare, and you start to know that map like the back of your hand. The roads aren't empty anymore, they're full of memories and dangers only you know how to handle. And every fight hits with real, dirty, raw tension. Days Gone is one of those games that people don't get at first, but those who stick with it never forget. It's about loss, guilt, and rebuilding some kind of hope at the end of the world. It grows slowly, but once it finds its rhythm, it delivers moments that stay with you. Every minute of patience, totally worth it. Starfield starts off like a promising space adventure, but way too slow. You spend a lot of time picking up simple tasks, mining here and there, and flying between planets that feel empty. The first few hours can be frustrating. Everything feels too procedural. The story takes time to gain traction, and the universe doesn't feel as alive as it should. But then, after a few key choices, everything changes. You encounter powerful factions, tough moral decisions, and storylines that challenge how you see the universe. Travel suddenly has meaning, characters start to stand out, and you realize you're part of something huge. It's not about running or blowing things up, it's about exploring, questioning, choosing, and every planet starts hiding more than just rocks and dust. Gameplay evolves too. Combat picks up speed, crafting becomes crucial, and shipbuilding turns into a full-blown obsession. Options open up, paths branch out, and your character stops being just another spacer. Now, you're part of the machine or the wrench that breaks it. The freedom that once felt shallow reveals itself as deep, layered, and full of consequence. Starfield demands patience, but rewards you with a universe worth discovering. The beginning tests you, the end consumes you. Once it all clicks, you see this is the kind of game that doesn't shout, it quietly builds something massive right in front of you. And from that point on, you can't let go. Atomic Heart drops you into a bizarre world full of deranged robots and retro-futuristic Soviet aesthetics, but it doesn't grab you right away. The intro is long, confusing, and packed with dialogue that seems to go nowhere. The controls feel weird, the pacing is uneven, and the opening pushes you away more than it pulls you in. But that weirdness, it's hiding something, and it's worth pushing through. Once you really dive into the combat and start exploring the facilities, everything shifts. The enemies are brutal and creative, and the environments are full of wild puzzles and insane details. The story gets darker, more twisted, and you find yourself asking, what the hell is going on here? That's when the game stops being weird and starts becoming addictive. Gameplay turns into a chaotic dance of gunplay, powers, and improvised weapons. You manage resources, uncover secrets, and take on machines with unpredictable moves. The soundtrack kicks in, your heart races, and every battle becomes a whirlwind of controlled chaos. When it all clicks, it's an action-packed fever dream in overdrive. Atomic Heart feels messy at first, and it is. But that mess is part of the charm. It keeps peeling back layers, making sense of the madness, and once you're in, you're all the way in. It's intense, bizarre, brutal, and way smarter than it looks. Easily one of the most surreal and addictive games in recent memory. And tell me, which of these games have you played, and what did you think of them? Drop a comment and let me know which title you would add to this list. If you can, hit that subscribe button to help me grow and never be stuck wondering what to play again. I've also linked a video that proves the PS4 generation was one of the best of all time. Check it out, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Big hug, happy gaming, and I'll see you tomorrow.